Do you feel like a fraud when you're taking on new challenges, when you are pursuing new opportunities, when you are maybe entering into new markets or exploring new topic areas? This is a completely normal thing. And for today's video, I got a question from a subscriber who is a copywriter wanting to enter new markets. And she's running into the same challenge that a lot of us face. And so I have some advice specifically in response to dealing with these feelings like a copywriter. But I think that if you've ever felt this, if you've ever felt like a fraud or an imposter as you take on new challenges, that a lot of this advice is going to have parallels in as far as applying it in your own life. So first things first, the subscriber question. Roy, my challenge is learning an industry well enough to get clients in it. I'm looking at you, finance. If I don't have strong knowledge in any specific area of life, ouch, then how do I show I'm competent enough to write about it? Yes, I highlight my on-point research skills. How do I overcome feeling like everyone will think I'm not smart enough to do the job? I don't come from a business background, so learning copywriting is a steep learning curve. I don't feel like I know anything close to what I need to know to get on a call with a CEO. Any recommendations? Thanks, Lindsay. Okay. So first things first, like if you're breaking into a new market, you know nothing about it, like I'm going to ask, is this the right decision? So it's one thing to pursue something like finance if you have an interest in it, if it's something where you would want to read about it after hours or when you're not working, or, if it's something that you're naturally drawn to. But if you don't have that interest and desire built in, if you don't have that as something that you are pulled or compelled to do, then I would strongly consider looking at other markets that, while they may not have the reputation of like investing as far as the opportunities for copywriters, may actually be a better opportunity for you. Because if you don't have that natural interest and desire and drive to explore a market, number one, your writing is not going to be as good. And number two, you are just naturally going to find the work harder. And while you may develop that interest through time, through doing the work over and over again, you may decide, 5 years in that you've just wasted the last 5 years of your career. And it is okay to go after an industry, to explore an industry that maybe is more interesting to you, because you will lead a more fulfilling life and have a more fulfilling career. And ultimately, you will have more success if you're able to align. I actually have it up on my wall. If you're able to find your ikigai, which is the combination of what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you are good at. So again, ikigai is the combination of what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you are good at. And the more that your work aligns with all four of those things, the more effective you will be in your work, and you will end up getting paid more because you develop your expertise around your passion, and you're able to work longer and harder and more productively by focusing on something, again, that's what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you are good at. So first off, I'm going to say, really analyze and decide, like, are you going into finance just because you've heard that that's where the money is, or are you going into finance because it's something that's a passion? And if you explore your life, you probably have. I mean, in the question here, you said, I don't have strong knowledge in any specific area of life. Maybe you don't, but maybe you have the passion to develop a strong knowledge in some other area where there is a market, where there are products where you could actually find more fulfillment and pursue opportunities with more vigor than you would by trying to force yourself to be a round peg in the square hole of finance. So, the on-point research skills and stuff, that's important, yes. But if you don't have the passion, if you don't have the excitement, I don't know how much it's going to be the right decision for you. Now, all of that said. I do want to move into this space of talking about, if you feel like a fraud, what do you do? And you decide, okay, I'm going to move forward. I'm at least going to experiment with this, try it. I'm going to figure it out and figure out, like, is this something that I will grow into, or is this something that I need to go away from? So the number one thing you can do actually is to admit ignorance. Like, it's okay. We all start from somewhere. And if you try to over-represent yourself, that's the time where you are most likely to get in trouble in this regard. If you say, I'm fairly new to this, I would like to explore an opportunity that's maybe the best fit for somebody who's new to this, who is very willing and capable of doing research and figuring it out. And I will work harder than people who have more experience to figure it out. In fact, that's how I got hired for my first marketing job. I basically wrote a cover letter to my resume that said, I don't have any experience, but I'm going to work harder than anybody else to figure it out. And they hired somebody else who had much better experience. And that guy lasted about 2 weeks. And then they came back and hired me because they saw that I was willing to figure it out. And the cover letter, I would not have gotten hired based on my resume, but I got hired based on that cover letter and that willingness to figure it out. And it started from this place of admitting ignorance, admitting that I was new, admitting that it was something that was something that I was going to have a learning curve, but I was willing to go through that learning curve, and I was willing to do the extra work that I knew would be necessary. So number one, you admit ignorance. Number two, recognize that you probably actually are feeling like more of an imposter than you are. Like, it's absolutely normal for someone to feel like a fraud. And as we go through life and as we take on new challenges, we constantly are questioning ourselves. Like, are we up for this? Are we able to handle this? Are we able to deal with this? And it is completely normal. There's even a name for it called the Impostor Syndrome. It's normal for us to feel like we're not. It's normal for us to feel like an imposter. And just recognize that those feelings are normal, but they don't necessarily represent your ability to achieve. Like, every time an explorer goes out into the world to discover new things, there's always moments where they don't know about the place that they're at. And then they learn about the place that they're at and they become familiar with it, and they don't feel like an imposter there. But then if they go to explore a new place, again, they have to figure out that new place as well. So it's normal to feel like you don't know what you're doing. It's normal to feel like a fraud. Anybody that is consistently achieving new things is going to have that same experience, and it's okay for you to as well. So with all this said, like, what do you do? The big answer is get started. Like, get started, start doing things, because the more adventures you have, the more you explore, the more you will know about these new places. And so you have to get started. You have to go through experience 1 and experience 2 and experience 3 and experience 4. And that's really the only way to develop knowledge. And so, from two angles on this, as far as finance goes in particular, like, I decided prior to becoming a financial copywriter to start investing my own money. So I knew what the experience was like. So I knew what the psychology of an investor who was making some money, losing some money, uncertain about the markets, all those things was like. And I did that for a couple of years before I actually started getting much investment copywriting work. And so getting started from the learning perspective is critically important, but also being willing to get started from the work perspective is important too, because one of the best ways to learn is actually to apply what you are taking in. Like, you have all this input, and the best way to learn the relevance and the importance of that input is to actually start doing output, start trying things, like start experimenting and recognizing that you're new. A lot of clients, if they take you on, are going to give you places where failure is contained, where it's a limited test, where you have an opportunity to learn. And in that regard, it is also valuable and beneficial to always, even as you develop experience, to approach things from this, like, this Buddhist concept of a beginner's mind. Like, you show up to every task, to every moment, willing to admit that, like, I don't know things and I'm here to learn. And even if you are a total expert at something, approaching it from this perspective of what don't I know about this situation? If I'm brand new to this, like what is my experience like? And having this beginner's mind and saying like um, how is my ignorance about this subject an advantage? How is me not knowing an advantage in this situation? And you may recognize, like, as a beginner, it's easier for me to see what excites me as an investor versus somebody who is like a grizzled old veteran of the industry and they have like 3 things that they do. And those 3 things have mostly worked. And so it works for them and it's based on their experience and expertise, but they're not able to be open to the moment and this specific opportunity. And so approaching things from a beginner's mind throughout your career will be helpful, but it also helps kind of lessen the feeling of feeling like a fraud because you, again, are accepting that you don't necessarily know everything at like the highest level, right? You are embracing the fact that you have a lot to learn still. Next, I would recommend that you actually learn and get good at Socratic interviewing, which Socratic interviewing is basically, it comes from Socrates and was written about by Plato. But it's basically this process of assuming that you don't know and trying not to impose your own internal belief structures or preconceptions onto a conversation and just be willing to ask a bunch of questions. So like, what do you think is going on in the markets right now? What do you see as the biggest opportunity? How are you uniquely capable to take advantage of it? Like what advantage do you have in terms of your investing ability that people wouldn't get anywhere else? Like what do you know about the markets that I don't? Like asking all of these questions. And then from a marketing perspective, like what type of copywriting do you think would be most applicable in this situation? Or like what angle of the promotion, do you have any good ideas for how to structure this? Or like just being open to asking all these questions of everybody involved with the project, preferably recording the conversation so you can reference them, and then using their answers not just as like a guide to how to talk about these things, but also for the actual structure and content of the presentation. In a lot of cases, you can get some of your best copy angles not through your imagination and your own internal expertise, but by asking good open-ended questions, Socratic interviewing questions, and then using the answers that you get and kind of editing and structuring them to fit whatever copywriting you are doing. Next up, I would say find stories. Actually, I think, one of the things that kind of fits in here is So I once worked with a very, very good copywriter who's not super well known, one of the best financial copywriters out there. And he actually prided himself in not knowing a ton about investing, but he understood this whole idea that like investors are responding. They're afraid of certain things. They have certain preconceptions. They have certain things that they love, certain things that they hate. They have greed, like fear and greed are of course big. I don't like to lump things that into that much of a dichotomy, but those are definitely strong influencers. And like identifying all of these different things that are like core human drivers is almost more important than the technical, like here's what you need to know about stock investing, because understanding the humanity and the emotional decision-making process that we go through and the experience of an investor, which a lot of those things can be picked up just based on human knowledge, right? Is often more important to generating marketing conversions and sales than the technicalities of investing. And at some point, the technicalities may become relevant, but a lot of that can be picked up through research. And so if you understand the human bit, you can usually speak to people better. And back to the stories thing, with regards to telling stories, that's often where you get to the human bit. So if you are able to poke and prod, and as you do this Socratic interviewing, make sure that you're asking questions about stories and trying to figure out like what is the story behind the person, behind the product, behind the service or opportunity, or behind the discovery, behind whatever. Like I have the story selling masterclass, which I teach how to use stories in a selling context. But the more you can think about finding the stories that you can tell, that you can share with the reader, the prospect, through your copy, the more effective you will be. And like, this isn't about being an expert in the industry. So the same thing could apply to all sorts of industries. The same thing can apply, like, John Carlton is famous for applying this in like golf and self-defense. And there's certainly plenty of health stories, and there's financial stories, and go into any industry. And actually, if you can find the right story, it's usually much easier to move the market that way than finding the right bit of information or research. And finally, remember that selling is selling. And so whether you are applying selling, like, there are things to learn at like a tactical implementation level, and maybe some techniques are specific to the industry. But when you zoom out to the level of principles and strategy, selling, the principles that go into effective selling and the strategies that go into effective selling are pretty consistent from industry to industry, market to market, because ultimately it's humans making an offer to other humans to like solve their pain or give them pleasure, right? And if you understand that kind of fundamental, like, my job is to find a way to present the problem, the challenge that this person is facing, the agitation of experiencing that problem, the invalidation of other solutions or why other solutions are invalid, what an ideal solution looks like that's going to end up aligning with my product, and then asking for action in terms of taking advantage of my offer, buying my product or service. Like, if you understand that fundamental process, then you understand selling, and everything else is just superficial details. And so with that in mind, like, you can go into different industries and feel comfortable and not have to feel like as much of a fraud. And again, like, going back to the beginner's mind and Socratic interviewing, in some sense, your ignorance can be your advantage, because you are just open to asking the right questions. And so I hope this has been helpful. My name is Roy Furr. Check out the links in the description with this. Make sure that you leave a comment. Have you ever felt this way? Would this advice have helped you? Or are you feeling this way? And is this advice helpful to you? Do you have any other questions? Just leave comments. Your general insights, perspectives, takeaways. You can also like the video, so that the magical algorithms of the internet know to share it with people like you, and to share more content like this with you. You can also share it yourself with people who might find it valuable, and subscribe. If you're not yet subscribed here, you can do that. You can also go to breakthroughmarketingsecrets.com. Again, the link is in the description, to get more content like this delivered to your inbox Monday through Friday. Again, my name is Roy Furr. This has been a video issue of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Check out the links in the description to get more. And I look forward to seeing you again in your next video. I'll see you soon. Bye.